Let me tell you about a case that still makes my blood boil, and I've seen a lot, 30 plus years on that bench. Murderers, thieves, liars, cheaters, people who fake injuries, people who fake marriages, people who fake their own death. Yes, that happened once. I've seen it all. But this one followed me home. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights after. 2 nights, my husband asked me what was wrong. I told him nothing, but something was wrong. Something was very wrong, because this case wasn't about money. It wasn't about property. It wasn't about a broken contract or a bad boyfriend. This case was about a man's life, and a woman who thought her parking spot was more important than that life. I walked into my courtroom like any other morning, coffee in my hand, hot, black, no sugar, that's how I like it, robe on, hair done, bailiff standing at attention, my clerk ready with the files. I'm thinking, okay, let's clear these cases, let's get through the nonsense, let's send people home with some common sense. That's what I do every single day. That's my job. That's my life. But the moment I sat down, I felt something different. You know that feeling? When the air in the room changes? When you can feel tension before anyone says a word? That was this morning. I looked at the plaintiff's side, empty chair, empty table. No one sitting there yet. Then I looked at the defendant's side, and there she was. This woman, let me describe her to you because the description matters. Her name tag said something fancy, Mrs. Victoria Vendor something, 3 last names. That's how you know when someone has 3 last names, they're either royalty or pretending to be. She was pretending. Designer suit, cream-colored, real Chanel. I know the difference because my daughter wanted one once and I almost had a heart attack at the price tag. Her hair was done, not like I brushed it this morning done, like I went to a salon at AM and paid $400 done. Her nails were long, perfect, red, the kind of red that says, I don't wash dishes. And her face? Arrogance. Pure, unfiltered, concentrated arrogance. The kind that comes from never being told no, never being told you're wrong, never being told you can't have that. Her whole life had been, yes, yes, Mrs. V, yes, ma'am, yes, of course, whatever you want. She sat there with her legs crossed, one foot bouncing in the air, like she was waiting for a spa appointment, not a courtroom hearing. She was on her phone in my courtroom before proceedings even started, typing something, smiling at the screen, probably posting on social media, probably complaining about having to wake up early. For court. Her lawyer, some young guy in an expensive tie that cost more than my first car, was whispering in her ear, going over notes, showing her papers, and she kept nodding like she was doing me a favor by showing up, like I should be grateful, like her presence in my courtroom was a gift to the justice system. I banged my gavel, just once, lightly. The sound echoed through the room. She looked up, slowly, like I had interrupted something important, and I said, Madam, this is not your living room. Put the phone away. Now, she smiled, a fake smile. You know the kind the lips move up, but the eyes don't change. The eyes stay cold. Same with sharks, same with politicians, same with people who are lying. She said, Sorry, Your Honor, I was just handling some business. Her voice was sweet, too sweet, like artificial sweetener, the kind that leaves a bad taste in your mouth after business. She was handling business in my courtroom, while a man sat on the other side of that room with tears in his eyes that hadn't even shown up yet. I didn't know the full story at that moment. I had read the file. I knew the basics, parking dispute, harassment claim, counterclaim, nothing unusual. I see 20 cases like this every week. But I felt it in my gut. You know when you have a feeling? When your stomach tells you something before your brain figures it out? That was this case. Something ugly was about to come out, something dark, something that was going to make me angry in a way I hadn't been angry in years. I looked at Mrs. V again. She had gone back to her phone, typing, smiling, completely unaware that her life was about to change forever, completely unaware that in 30 minutes the whole courtroom would be looking at her like she was a monster. What she did next? You won't believe it, and I was sitting right there on the bench, watching every second of it. I had the best seat in the house, and let me tell you, it was not a show I enjoyed. Let me describe this woman to you properly, because the way she presented herself, the way she walked, the way she sat, the way she looked at people that told me everything I needed to know before she said a single word. She wore a cream-colored Chanel suit, real one, Not a knockoff from some website. Real buttons, real stitching, real fabric. I know the difference because I've been on television for 30 years and I've seen more fake designer clothes than a customs officer at JFK Airport. This was real, probably cost $8,000, maybe 10. Her heels were so high I wondered how she walked into the courthouse without breaking an ankle. Christian Louboutin, red bottoms, the whole thing. She walked like she owned the floor, like every step was a favor to the ground beneath her. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. Not a single strand out of place. Zero. None. You know how much product and time that takes? Hours in a chair while someone sprays and pins and sprays again. And for what? To sit in a courtroom for an hour? To be seen by me and my bailiff and a few clerks? That's not for us. That's for her. That's because she can't stand to look anything less than perfect, even when her whole life is about to fall apart. She sat with her legs crossed at the ankle, one foot bouncing, bounce, 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 like a nervous habit, or maybe impatience, or maybe both. Her hands were folded in her lap, expensive rings on every finger, diamonds, big ones, the kind that catch the light and send little sparkles across the room. Her name, I'll call her Mrs. V, that's enough. She doesn't deserve more than that. She doesn't deserve the 3 last names her husband bought for her. The plaintiff was Mr. Finch, Harold Finch, 67 years old, retired security guard, worked at a high-end apartment building for 43 years. 43 years, same building, same uniform, same post. He probably watched Mrs. V walk in and out of that building 1,000 times, held the door for her, called her a cab, carried her groceries, and she never once said, "Thank you, I guarantee it." Mr. Finch came in a clean but cheap suit, navy blue, slightly too big, probably from a department store, probably bought for funerals and court appearances only. His shoes were polished but old. You could see the cracks in the leather. His hands were shaking, not a little, a lot, like leaves in the wind. When he sat down, he kept looking at the floor. He wouldn't look at Mrs. V, he wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the floor like it was the only safe place in the room. I started the case the way I always do. Quick, efficient, no nonsense. "Mr. Finch," I said, "you're suing Mrs. V for what? Emotional distress? Medical bills? Harassment? Tell me in 30 seconds or less. Go." He opened his mouth. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He was that nervous, that scared, that broken. Before he could say 2 words, Mrs. V interrupted. She leaned forward. Her chair creaked. She said, "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. He's been harassing me for months, following me, calling my husband's office, leaving notes on my car. I have a restraining order pending, actually. My lawyers are filing it today, and I don't understand why we're even here." Her voice was loud, clear, confident, the voice of someone who has never been told to be quiet. I held up my hand, just one finger. "That's usually enough." "Madam," I said, "I didn't ask you yet. I asked him, so sit, be quiet, and wait your turn. That's how this works. That's how every courtroom in America works. If you don't know that, you shouldn't be here." She opened her mouth again. I swear to you, she opened her mouth again, like she couldn't help herself, like the words were exploding out of her whether she wanted them to or not. I leaned forward. I looked her right in the eyes. I said, "If you interrupt one more time before I ask you a question, I will hold you in contempt of court. Do you understand what that means? It means handcuffs. It means a holding cell. It means I decide when you get out, and right now I'm not feeling very generous." She closed her mouth, but her eyes were shooting daggers at me, like I was the unreasonable one, like I was the problem, like I was the villain in her story. I turned back to Mr. Finch. I softened my voice, just a little, just enough. "Go ahead, Mr. Finch. Take your time. No one's going to interrupt you again. I promise." He nodded, swallowed, and then he told me. And the moment he started talking, I knew that Mrs. V had opened her mouth and told her first lie, because she said she never saw an ambulance. She said she didn't know. She said she was parked legally, all lies. And that was just the beginning. The real dirt? The real dirt came out later, and when it did, even I was shocked. I remember exactly when Mr. Finch's eyes filled with water. I remember every detail, the way the light came through the window, the way the clock on the wall ticked, the way my pen felt in my hand. I had asked him a simple question, a basic question, the kind of question I ask 20 times a day without thinking about it. I said, "Mr. Finch, why did you file this case? What are you hoping to get from my court? Money? An apology? A restraining order? Tell me, what do you want?" And he looked at me, just looked at me, for a long time, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. That is a long time when you are sitting in a courtroom and everyone is watching. And then his chin started trembling, his bottom lip quivered, his eyes got wet, not crying yet, but close, so close. He said, "Your Honor, I am not here for money. I do not want her money. I do not want her house or her car or her jewelry or any of it. I want someone to know what happened. I want someone to say it was wrong. That is all. I just want someone to say it was wrong." I put my pen down. I always put my pen down when something important is coming. My clerk knows this. My bailiff knows this. Even the lawyers know this. When the pen goes down, Judy is listening. "Tell me," I said. "Tell me what happened, from the beginning. Do not leave anything out." He took a breath, a deep one, the kind you take before you jump into cold water. And then he told me about his friend, his best friend of 40 years. 40 years, that is longer than most marriages, longer than most careers, longer than most people stay in one city. The friend's name was Carlos Ramirez. Mr. Ramirez, 69 years old, retired bus driver, lived alone, had a cat named George, liked to play dominoes in the park on Sundays, a quiet man, a good man, the kind of man who held the door for strangers and gave directions to tourists and never complained about anything. Mr. Ramirez was a diabetic type 2, had been for 20 years. He took insulin every morning, checked his blood sugar 4 times a day, wore a medical alert bracelet usually. But that morning he forgot. He was in a hurry. He wanted to get to the diner before the breakfast rush ended. He also had heart problems, 3 stents, blood pressure medicine, the whole package. His doctor had told him to be careful, to avoid stress, to avoid extreme heat, to avoid running or lifting heavy things. That morning was hot. August in the city, 93 degrees, humidity so thick you could taste it, the kind of day where you step outside and immediately start sweating. Mr. Finch and Mr. Ramirez were walking to a diner, the Silver Star Diner, corner of 8th and Main. They went there every Tuesday, same booth, same waitress, same order, eggs over easy, toast, coffee, talking about nothing and everything. Old friends do that. They were half a block from the diner when Mr. Ramirez collapsed. Right there on the sidewalk, just fell. 1 second he was walking. The next second he was on the ground. His face was pale. His lips were blue. His eyes were open but not seeing anything. Mr. Finch started screaming for help. He screamed so loud that people 2 blocks away heard him. A woman walking her dog called 911. A man from the pizza shop ran out with water. Someone else brought a towel to put under Mr. Ramirez's head. The ambulance came, 4 minutes. That is good response time. Really good. Lights flashing, sirens wailing, everything you want to see when someone you love is dying on the sidewalk. But there was one problem, one big problem. Mrs. V's car was parked in the ambulance bay, the only spot where the ambulance could pull in close enough to load Mr. Ramirez on a stretcher. It was a clearly marked zone, bright red paint on the curb, big signs on the wall, ambulance only, no parking, tow away zone, $500 fine. Her car was a black Mercedes SUV, brand new, shiny, clean, parked right in the middle of the red zone like she owned it, like the rules did not apply to her. The paramedics jumped out of the ambulance, 2 of them, young, strong, trained for emergencies. They looked at the car, they looked at each other, and then they started banging on her window. When Mr. Finch told me that his friend died while that woman sat on her phone, I could not stop myself. I felt my face get hot, my jaw tightened, my hands gripped the edge of my bench. I have been doing this for 30 years on the bench. Before that, I was a lawyer. Before that, I was a law student. I have seen murder trials. I have seen child custody cases that made me cry in my chambers. I have seen families destroyed by greed and lies and betrayal. But this was different. This was a woman who chose her convenience over someone's life, who chose her phone call over a stranger's heartbeat, who chose her parking spot over everything. Mr. Finch's hands were shaking so hard that when my clerk gave him a cup of water, he could not hold it. The cup fell, water spilled on the floor. He started crying, quiet tears, the kind that mean something, and Mrs. V. She was still sitting there with her legs crossed, bouncing her foot, checking her phone under the table, like nothing was happening, like she was waiting for a bus. I asked her one question, just one, a simple question, and she could not answer. I said, Mrs. V, let me ask you something very simple. Yes or no, did you or did you not park your black Mercedes SUV in a marked ambulance zone on the morning of June 14th? She did not answer right away. She looked at her lawyer. Her lawyer looked at his notes. His notes did not help. She said, I do not recall. I said, you do not recall? You do not recall where you parked your car? It was 3 months ago, not 3 years. 3 months. Most people remember where they parked yesterday. Some people remember where they parked last week. You are telling me you do not remember a specific morning when paramedics banged on your window. She said, I park in that area often, several times a week. I do not remember every single day. I am a busy person. I have a lot on my mind. I said, you have a lot on your mind. That is your answer. You have a lot on your mind? She nodded, like that was reasonable, like that explained everything. I said, Mrs. V, let me ask you another question. Do you remember the morning when paramedics banged on your window for 15 minutes while a man died 20 feet away from your car? Do you remember that? She shifted in her seat. Her foot stopped bouncing. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. Not sorry, not guilty, uncomfortable, like she was sitting on a hard chair. She said, I remember someone knocking on my window, but I did not know it was an emergency. I thought it was a homeless person or someone asking for money. That happens a lot in that neighborhood. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud in my courtroom on the record. I could not help it. I said, you thought a person in a paramedic uniform, standing next to an ambulance with flashing lights, banging on your window was a homeless person asking for money. Is that what you are telling me? She did not answer. I said, Madame, you are telling me that you do not remember the morning when paramedics banged on your window for 15 minutes while a man died 20 feet away. You do not remember the ambulance? The lights? The sirens? The screaming? None of it? She looked at her lawyer again. Her lawyer was now examining his shoes very closely, like he had never seen shoes before. I love that moment when a lawyer realizes his client has been lying to him too. When he realizes that the big paycheck is not worth the embarrassment. I said, Clerk, pull up the video, exhibit A, play it on. The main screen. I saw it with my own eyes, and so did everyone else in that courtroom. The video came from a security camera mounted on the building across the street. High resolution, clear picture. You could see everything. The ambulance, red and white lights flashing, the paramedics running, their uniforms, their equipment, their faces full of urgency. Mrs. V's black Mercedes parked perfectly in the red zone, right in the middle, like she had aimed for it. One paramedic went to her driver's side window. He banged with his fist, hard. You could see the impact. The car shook. Mrs. V looked up from her phone. She looked at him. She looked at his uniform. She looked at the ambulance. Behind him, and then she went back to her phone. He banged again, harder. She looked up again. She waved her hand at him, like he was a fly, like he was bothering her, like he was insignificant. A second paramedic came to her passenger window, banged. She turned her head. She rolled her window down, just an inch, just enough to hear. They said something to her. The video did not have audio, but you could read their lips. Please move your car. Emergency. Someone is dying. She shook her head. She pointed at her phone. She rolled the window back up, and she stayed for 15 minutes. The video had a timestamp, 9:47 a.m. when the ambulance arrived. 10:02 a.m. when she finally moved, 15 minutes. During those 15 minutes, Mr. Ramirez lay on the hot pavement. Mr. Finch held his hand. The paramedics tried everything. CPR, oxygen, a defibrillator. Nothing worked. They could not load him properly because the car was in the way. They had to carry the stretcher around the car, through a narrow gap up onto the curb, down again. Every second mattered. Every second was a heartbeat. Every second was a chance. At 10:02, Mrs. V finished her phone call. She put her phone in her purse. She started her car. She pulled forward 10 feet, and then she drove away. Did not look back, did not roll down her window, did not ask if the man was okay. Mr. Ramirez died at the hospital. 10:47 a.m., 45 minutes after the ambulance arrived. The doctors said if he had gotten there 10 minutes earlier, just 10 minutes, he might have survived. The whole courtroom went silent when the video ended. You could hear someone breathing. That was it. No one coughed. No one shuffled. Papers. No one whispered. And then I played the 911 call. The whole courtroom went silent again. But this time it was a different kind of silent. The kind where everyone is holding their breath. The kind where you can feel the weight of what just happened. And that is when everything changed. Here is the part that made me want to throw my gavel at the wall. Here is the part that made me question whether I was in a courtroom or a theater of the absurd. Mrs. V did not come to my court as a defendant. She was not sitting there because someone sued her. She was sitting there because she filed the case. She was the plaintiff. She was the one who started this whole thing. Let me repeat that so you understand how insane this is. She blocked an ambulance. A man died. His best friend grieved. And then she turned around and sued that best friend for harassment. She wanted $50,000, plus a restraining order, plus legal fees, plus everything. She blocked an ambulance. A man died. And then she sued the man who tried to save his friend. Do you understand how backwards that is? Do you understand how someone can be that disconnected from reality? That entitled? That blind? I thought, what is happening here? Am I in an alternate universe? Did I accidentally walk into a courtroom on Mars? Did someone put something in my coffee? I leaned forward. I looked at Mrs. V. I said, let me understand something. You are sitting here right now after watching that video, after hearing that 911 call, after seeing a man's best friend cry in my courtroom, and you are telling me that Mr. Finch is the one who did something wrong? She said, Your Honor, I have a right to park where I want. There were no signs. I have parked there for years. No one ever told me I could not. I said there were 4 signs, 4, 1 on the wall, 1 on the pole, 1 on the curb, 1 on the sidewalk, and the curb was painted red, bright red, fire engine red, not subtle, not easy. To miss, are you telling me you did not see any of that? She said, I did not notice the signs. I was in a hurry. I had an important meeting. My husband's company was closing a deal. I had to be on a conference call. I said, you had a conference call while a man was dying, while paramedics were banging on your window, while someone was screaming for help 20 feet away. That is your excuse? A conference call? She said it was an important call, millions of dollars, jobs on the line. My husband was counting on me, my blood pressure, I could feel it rising, I could feel my face getting red. My clerk later told me she was worried I was going to have a heart attack right there on the bench. I said, Mrs. V, let me ask you something. How much money did that call make? How many millions? She paused, about 12 million. I said, $12 million, and how much is Mr. Ramirez's life worth? How much is a 69-year-old retired bus driver who played dominoes on Sundays worth? Can you put a price on that? She did not answer. I said, you cannot, can you? Because some things do not have a price. Some things are priceless, like a man's life, like a friend's love, like the last moments between 2 people who have known each other for 40 years. You cannot put a dollar sign on that, but apparently you can block an ambulance for it. And then she started crying. Big, loud, dramatic sobs, the kind actors practice in front of mirrors. She grabbed a tissue from her lawyer. She threw her head back. She wailed. She said, I did not know he was dying. I swear to God I did not know. If I had known, I would have moved. I am not a monster. I am not a bad person. I have children. I have a family. I would never hurt anyone on purpose. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face, big wet tears running through her makeup, leaving tracks on her cheeks. She said, please, Your Honor, please believe me. I did not know. I leaned forward. I looked her right in the eyes. I did not blink. I wanted her to see me, really see me, see the truth in my face. And I said, Mrs. V, those tears? Fake. I have seen real tears in this courtroom. Real tears from real pain, from mothers who lost children to drunk drivers, from fathers who lost their homes to greedy landlords, from wives who lost their husbands to cancer. Real tears do not look like that. Real tears do not stop on command. Real tears do not come with a performance. I pointed at her. You are not crying because you are sorry. You are crying because you got caught. You are crying because the video exists. You are crying because $12 million cannot buy your way out of this one. Those are not tears of guilt. Those are tears of getting caught, and there is a big difference. She stopped immediately, just like that. The sobbing stopped. The wailing stopped. The tears dried up. Her face went blank, cold, hard. She looked at her lawyer. Her lawyer looked at the ceiling. I sat back, I took a breath, and I made a decision right there. A decision that I knew would make headlines. A decision that I knew would make her husband angry. A decision that I knew would change lives. And it was not a small one. Let me tell you something, and I want everyone watching to hear this clearly. I want you to pause this video. I want you to write this down. I want you to put it on your refrigerator or your bathroom mirror or your dashboard. Read it every morning. Read it every night, because this is important. This is the most important thing I have ever said on this bench. Money does not give you the right to play God. Mrs. V had money, lots of it. More money than most people will see in their entire lives. Her husband was a real estate developer. They owned buildings. They owned parking garages. They owned a house in the city and a house in the country and probably a house in another country too. They owned cars that cost more than Mr. Finch's house. They owned closets full of clothes that had never been worn twice. And she had spent her whole life being told that her time was more valuable than other people's time, that her phone call was more important than someone else's emergency, that her parking spot mattered more than someone else's life, that the rules applied to everyone except her. Why? Because she had money, because she had a last name, because she knew people, because her husband made donations, because she had never faced a consequence in her entire privileged life. But in my courtroom? In my courtroom, everyone is equal. The billionaire sits on the same bench as the beggar. The CEO gets the same 30 seconds to speak as the janitor. The woman with 3 last names gets the same questioning as the woman with no last name at all. And when you do something wrong, when you make a choice that hurts someone else, I do not care how much money you have. I do not care who your husband knows. I do not care what your last name is. I will hold you accountable. That is my job. That is what I swore to do. That is what I have done for 30 years. Mr. Finch, I want you to listen to me. I want you to hear every word I say. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. You were a good friend, a loyal friend, the kind of friend everyone wishes they had. When Mr. Ramirez fell, you did not run away. You did not check your phone. You did not worry about your makeup or your hair or your important meeting. You stayed. You held his hand. You screamed for help. You stayed with him until the end. And then you came to my courtroom to tell the truth. Not for money, not for revenge, for justice, just for someone to say that it was wrong. You are a hero. Do you hear me? A hero. Not the kind with a cape or a medal. The real kind. The kind who shows up, the kind who does not give up, the kind who fights for what is right even when it is hard. I want you to walk out of this courtroom with your head held high. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing. Mr. Ramirez was lucky to have you as a friend. And if there is an afterlife, if he is somewhere watching, I know he is proud of you. I know he is saying, that is my friend. That is Harold. That is the man who did not leave. Me and Mrs. VU, you are the reason that man is dead. Not the heart attack, not the diabetes, not the heat, not his age. You, because if you had moved your car, if you had just looked up from your phone for 2 seconds, if you had rolled down your window and listened, those paramedics would have had Mr. Ramirez in that ambulance in 2 minutes. 2 minutes, that is how long it takes to load a stretcher when there is no car in the way. Instead, it took 17 minutes, and 17 minutes was too long. You killed him, not with your hands, not with a weapon, but with your selfishness, your arrogance, your complete and total lack of regard for any human being other than yourself. Live with that every day, every night, every time you get in your car and see a red curb, every time you hear a siren, every time you pick up your phone. Remember Mr. Ramirez. Remember his face. Remember his friend holding his hand. Remember that he died because you would not move your car. And remember that I am the one who told the truth about you, not your lawyers, not your publicist, not your husband. Me, Judge Judith Scheindlin, and I do not care if you do not like it. My verdict, case dismissed. Mrs. V gets nothing, not $1, not 1 cent, not a restraining order, not an apology, nothing. In fact, I am instructing Mr. Finch's lawyer to file a motion immediately. A motion for Mrs. V to pay all of Mr. Finch's legal fees, every single dollar, because this case should never have come to my courtroom. It was a waste of my time. It was a waste of the court's time. And it was an insult to Mr. Ramirez's memory. Court is adjourned. I banged my gavel. I stood up. I walked toward my chambers. I did not look at Mrs. V. I did not want to see her face. But what happened after court? Even I did not see that coming. I walked back to my chambers, took off my robe, hung it on the hook behind my door, the same hook, the same robe, the same motion for 30 years. I sat down at my desk, put my head in my hands. I was tired, not physically tired, emotionally tired, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix. My clerk knocked on the door, softly, like she was afraid to interrupt. "Judge," she said, "that woman, Mrs. V, she is still out there, in the hallway. She will not leave. She says she needs to talk to you." I said, "Absolutely not. Tell her to go through her lawyer. Tell her to file a motion. Tell her to do literally anything other than stand in my hallway waiting for me." My clerk said I did. I told her all of that. She will not move. She says she has something important to tell you. Something about new information. I should have said no. I should have called security. I should have walked out the back door and gone home to my husband and my dog and forgotten Mrs. V ever existed. But I was curious. Stupid, I know. After 30 years, I still get curious. I still want to know what people will say next. I still want to see how deep the lies go. I walked into the hallway. The fluorescent lights were buzzing. The floor was cold marble, and there was Mrs. V standing alone. No lawyer, no assistant, no husband. Just her. And she was different. The Chanel suit was still there. The hair was still perfect. The heels were still high, but something was gone. The arrogance, the confidence, the bounce in her foot, all gone. She looked smaller, older, tired. She said, "Judge, thank you for coming out. I know you did not have to." I said, "I have 5 minutes. Talk." She stepped closer, too close. I could smell her perfume, expensive, flowery, the kind that announces itself before you do. She lowered her voice, not loud enough for anyone else to hear. "Just me." She said, "My husband knows people, important people, politicians, judges, reporters. He has donated millions. He can make things happen. He can make things go away." I did not move. I did not blink. She said, "He can have you removed from that bench. He has done it before. Not to you, to others. Judges who ruled against his companies. They are not judges anymore. They are lawyers again, or retired, or just gone." She paused, waiting for me to react, waiting for me to look scared. I did not. She said, "So maybe you want to reconsider your verdict. Maybe you want to think about your future. Maybe you want to be smart about this." I looked at her for a long time, 10 seconds, 15, long enough for her to start shifting her weight from foot to foot. And then I laughed right in her face, a loud, real, genuine laugh, the kind that comes from your belly, the kind that surprises even you. I said, "Madam, I have been a judge for longer than you have been married. I have had death threats. I have had people spit on me. I have had lawyers try to get me removed. I have had politicians call for my resignation. I have been sued. I have been investigated. I have been attacked in the press, and I am still here. Do you know why?" She did not answer. I said, "Because I do my job, and my job is to tell the truth. I do not care about your husband's money. I do not care about his donations. I do not care about his political friends. I care about the law. I care about justice, and I care about making sure that people like you face consequences for people like Mr. Ramirez." I stepped closer to her. Now she was the one who looked uncomfortable. I said, "You just threatened a judge. That is a felony in front of witnesses. My clerk heard everything. My bailiff heard everything. There are cameras in this hallway. Do you want to explain that to your husband? Do you want to explain that to your lawyer? Do you want to spend the night in jail?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I said, "Walk away right now. Go home. Pack a bag. because things are about to get very difficult for you." She walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Click, 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 getting quieter and quieter until she was gone. I went back to my chambers, picked up my phone, called the district attorney's office. "I know we have worked together for 20 years. I said, I am sending you a case, video, transcript, everything. Look into criminal charges, negligent homicide, reckless endangerment, obstruction of emergency services, possibly more." The DA said, "That's serious?" I said, "A man is dead because a woman would not move her car." "Yes, that's serious." I hung up, sat back in my chair, looked at the ceiling. I do not know what happened after that. That is not my job. My job is the courtroom. My job is the verdict. What happens next?